Thank you so much for joining us for Transforming Healthcare Through New Ways of Doing and Being with our featured guests today, Don Ellison, MD, and Mohammed Wahidi, PhD. As I introduce the event, I encourage you to share in the chat your name, where you're joining us from, and if you wish, your email or LinkedIn profile URL for further connections. So, our time together today is officially 90 minutes. The first hour is designated for our time with Don and Mohammed, and the remaining 30 minutes are for collaborative conversations. You can join us for just the event. I know your calendar might make it difficult to stay, but you can also stay for the networking. It's your choice. However, the feedback from these events demonstrates that that the participants get great value from the after event networking, and I do hope you can stay with us. Today, we are introducing two concepts, the two loops model and strategic doing. And why are we doing this? Well, because HRC, the Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative, is focused on transforming how we approach innovation in healthcare. These models emphasize the importance of relationships, community building, and practical frameworks for fostering innovation and navigating change. Let me tell you a little bit about how we'll use our time together today. First, I'll introduce Don and Mohammed, and they will each take about 10 minutes, so 20 minutes in total, to share a highlight level overview of the two loops model and strategic doing. Following that brief information share, we'll open the time to all of you to ask questions, collaborate on what was shared, or engage with the concept of collaborative innovation for the reinvention of healthcare. About 10 minutes before the hour, I will pause our dialogue and ask Don and Mohammed to share any last thoughts. And then, as we conclude the formal event, I'll give you a sneak peek at our first HRC Impact Network map. This is really exciting. So I hope you'll be with us those last 5 minutes to get just a little snippet of what we've been creating. And I will also invite you to join us and share your information with the growing network in this map. So details about how to do that will be coming. We will share the full recording and summary via email. We will also share the recording and short highlight clips on YouTube. Okay, so let me introduce you to our guests. Don Ellison is an ABEM, sounds like the alphabet, certified emergency medicine physician who has practiced for over 25 years. She was a crucial conversations instructor with the Mayo Clinic Health System and has done graduate work on coaching through the College of Executive Coaching. She spent her 2006 to 2007 Bush Medical Fellowship learning how to build collaborative cultures. She is an art of hosting trained facilitator, leading community engagement around health and wellness topics. Currently, she helps providers and leaders in healthcare organizations communicate and lead thoughtfully, transparently, and deliberately. She is a certified resilience trainer and with the Global Center for Resiliency and Wellbeing. And I'm really thrilled to say she is part of the team helping to create HRC. Mohammed Wahidi focuses on improving organizational conditions by decentralizing systems and fostering self-organizing teams. His experience includes successfully guiding cross-functional groups in designing and executing transformational projects across public and private enterprises. These projects have consistently yielded significant organizational results, enhanced team morale, and elevated the quality of work life. And I'm thrilled to share that he is actually joining us today from London. We have a global community developing here, which I just love. So it is my pleasure to hand over about the next 20 minutes to Don and Mohammed. We'll start with Don. And I think, Mohammed, are you with us? Are you going to be able to share your screen?
Yes, we'll do that right now.
Excellent. All right, Don.
All right. Thanks, Denise, for that introduction. I am really pleased to be with you and Mohammed and everybody else today. This is an exciting time. My work with influencing healthcare since 2008 has been to build skills for personal and collective agency so that we're creating the world in which we want to live, right? In which we can thrive. And I'm so excited to be part of HRC so that we can create the world in which our grandchildren's grandchildren can flourish. Berkana Institute came up with this model of systems change, is generally attributed to Meg Wheatley and Deborah Fries. I really love this model because I feel like it's an accurate description of how systems evolve. I like that it's relationship centered, and it gives me hope for emergent systems that can be better than dominant systems that are in place currently. So let's start with the dominant system. The dominant system exists as a living system, and it has a natural life course. There are economic and cultural forces that are keeping it in place, but it works well for some and not so well for others. And at some point, dominant systems begin to decay because it's not meeting the needs of those it's intended to serve, and it's not meeting the needs of those who work within it. So we see this for sure in the prevalence of burnout in the American healthcare system. And yet many people rely on this system for their income. And these are the stabilizers. A CEO whose income is 25 times the average income of the healthcare workers is not likely to want to do anything that would change that. We all can be, can succumb to those forces of money and greed. So pioneers or innovators, seeing that there's a better way, drop out and find new ways of doing the work. And they need to find each other. So how does HRC accelerate this emergence of a new system? Well, we want to be able to name the pioneers. And you guys can help us out right now by naming pioneers that you know that are finding new ways of doing things and entering those into the chat. We're going to download this, collect that chat information, and that's going to help us to build these networks. So who do you know that's pioneering good work in health and care? We also need to connect those pioneers. So who would it be useful for you to connect with? Or who do you know that could benefit from connecting with someone else? If you have someone in mind, or a couple different folks that are pioneers in mind, enter those into our chat. And if you have ideas about how we can connect people, also enter that into the chat. So we need to name those pioneers, we need to connect them, and then we need to nourish those connections to build networks and ultimately communities of practice. And what do I mean by communities of practice? Communities of practice work together, they learn together, and they relate with each other, and they do the good work. So we name them, we connect them, we build these networks, and then we nourish them with all sorts of development. If you have ideas of how we can nourish you, let us know that in the chat as well. And then when those communities of practice are in it and doing the work, we illuminate that work for the outside world. The world needs to know what good work is happening so that we can build that emergent system and it becomes the system of influence. A couple other things that I want you to note on this model. Sometimes you can find people who have influence in the dominant system that want to steward an emergent system. And those can be important to involve in the process because they have influence. They may know some resources that could be helpful. We will need people who can hospice the dominant system. We want to find the good in that dominant system because there is a lot of good in our healthcare system, and create that compost that will nourish the seeds of an emergent system. So I wonder who's out there now today who can do that hospice work of the dominant system. And then we're going to need people who can transition folks from the dominant system to the new system of influence, because there are people who depend on the dominant system for their income, for their livelihood, and they will need to be able to transition over to that new system. I don't know how that will happen, but I have faith that there will be members of HRC that will want to be in that space and innovate how this could happen. So I'm going to stop there, just hitting the highlights on the 2 loops of change. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mohammed, and he can talk to you about strategic doing and how that fits into 2 loops. Mohammed.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you to the network for inviting me for this talk. I really am excited to be here. I'm an organizational consultant, but before that, I was a pharmacist, and I know lots about the systems, and I went actually into organizational consultancy and through my graduate education because of the difficulties that I've. I'm originally from Kuwait, but I'm American educated, and now currently I'm in London, England. So what I'd like to talk about how strategic doing, which is a strategy discipline that I learned about 3 years ago, how it can help us in terms of networking and how it can help and how it relates to the two-loop model under discussion today. The need for change, usually change happens. You can't have change by individual actions alone. It happens when people connect and work together in networks, leading to emergence, according to the theory here. And this is the transformation of small local efforts into powerful systems. However, the concept of network is still elusive, and I think strategic doing has a lot to say about that can help us manage it or explore our way into it. And this is from Mag Wheatley and Deborah Fries from the Berkana Institute, who wrote, networks create the conditions for emergence. Yet much of the current work on networks displays old paradigm bias. So what they were saying and posing some important questions here, it says, why and how do networks form? And what keeps them alive and growing? And what keeps members connected? And how now we are a network, what's next? And how can we grow? And I would like to explore how strategic doing can help answer these questions. But before that, I want us to consider the more conventional way we are used to in terms of managing and planning. Here we have a report. You see, and there is so when I see any call to action, I remember this report. When I was in graduate school, it was like every graduate student's presentation started with this report. So it was like a strong call to action here. This report came in 2001 with a sense of urgency. How did we get to this state of healthcare, and what could we do about it? And they were a real call to action here. And a lot of great work went into this, great analysis and good deal of expert opinions and recommendations. But it was very much like traditional management, and it did not have the intended impact. And what I mean by traditional management, as this slide illustrates, these methods are quite familiar to all of us. It starts with gathering data to define a problem. Next, we analyze the data to identify causes. And then we formulate solutions using existing framework, like something like quality framework or like a value stream mapping. And it's like we have to map everything before we can recommend any solutions. Then we develop an action plan. And this is sometimes a decorative sentence, or it could be like an outline of steps we need to take to implement the solution. Finally, we call people to act. And it's so logical, and it's always very logical to do the work this way. But the impact can fall short. We're using existing framework. What we've been doing in the past, we've been following a very traditional work. And then this works very well in a stable system. But now we have more than that. We have a complexity that's beyond us. So what would happen when nothing happens? 17 years later, passed with not much done, still grappling with the urgent issues in healthcare. We end up with another cycle of analysis, leading yet to another report. In 2018, we saw the release of Crossing the Global Quality Chasm. And this is another report stating much urgency here. The changes recommended in this report could not be more urgent. So here we are, 17 years after 2001, despite the best efforts, traditional management approaches were left with needing more. So our approach is lagging way behind. And this is because healthcare system challenges are the type of complex problems are often referred to as wicked problems. And they're called wicked for a reason. They're very confusing and defy easy definition and cause analysis. You can't just pinpoint a single cause or a straightforward solution. Like if you look at this tangled mess attempt, this attempts to show that we begin here in the middle of complexity, and the solutions, well, there could be many. Solution A, solution B, solution C. Each path offers a different approach. So how do we get through a complex? How do we get through the complexity to get to these solutions? So this is where we need to understand that the challenges of healthcare are actually don't sit in the realm of what we call we know how. These are problems where traditional management, advocacy, deciding and delegating come into play. Simple hierarchy would do, not for the healthcare challenges. They sit in the realm of we don't know how. These are challenges that require adaptive management methods, require skillfulness and inquiry and collaborative conversations. They require a design-do approach to working. It takes different mindset. It takes different set of tools and rigor and process. Moving from decide and delegate to design and do, moving from a small group to people thinking, like there's a small group of people thinking and telling the rest of us to do, to everyone thinking and doing. This is where strategic doing shines, enables everyone to get involved in thinking and doing, leveraging the power of network and collaboration. So I'd like to speak about the contribution of strategic doing to our understanding of network and how we can work in networks here. So Ed Morrison is the founder of, was deeply inspired. He was the founder of strategic doing, deeply inspired of the open source operating systems and software development. And the story of system like Linux, and as developed through loosely connected network of engineers from all around the world, was intriguing. And this network model was something he wanted to emulate. So he wanted to know how to transfer the lessons from open source software development to tackle complex challenges in organizations. So the big questions he had is how do networks move assets from older systems to new opportunities? How can people come together to form and execute complex strategies? And they had over 20 years journey of several network-based community engagements. First, he was alone when he started with Oklahoma City project in 1993, and then later with the other projects here, just a sample from a variety of projects they had when he joined Purdue to teach strategic doing. So the earliest was Oklahoma City, 1993. For 8 years, they experimented with engaging community and exploring ways to transform the economy. 10 years later, Cluster continued to thrive. And in 2010, nearly 2 decades after Ed began, the city gained this recognition here. And the other ones, if I want to talk about the Milwaukee experiment, there's what Milwaukee Water Council took advantage of also strategic doing by linking and leveraging strategies to define competitive opportunities. And the council started work in July 2008. They worked directly with public sector, private sector companies, academic institutions, and funding agencies to make this collaboration. The immediate results were incubator started immediately for companies for freshwater technology. And that happened immediately with the first couple of months. And then this led to generation of focus strategic areas. These are four focus areas here: the environment, energy efficiency, and processing and treatment and monitoring detection. So the outcome was, after 10 years, the Water Council of Milwaukee became a global leader in freshwater technology. And from that and other projects, we learned something about networks, and that developing a collaborative. First, networks are not all the same. Networks they can be, as simple as a group that advocate together. I mean, something like a sport fan group is an advocate network, and then there's a network of learning that, for example, professional organizations that we're a member of. We learn together, we pay our dues and go and get educated and connected. But what we're thinking, innovation happened with something called innovating network, and these networks requires a lot of time to happen and higher trust levels to occur. And developing collaborative network requires building trust among people who may have never worked together, and trust takes time. But with a disciplined process like strategic doing, is by helping people start working and doing the doable, you get there relatively quickly. So the idea to get people or companies who may have never worked together to start working together and build that trust. And this is how it works. And this is a slide that shows we want to look here into the left, into the right-hand side, and see the ultimate goal, the capacity to innovate together. To reach this, we need to build trust. But how does this trust develop? Develop through doing, by collaborating together on projects. So sometimes we confuse terms like cooperation or teamwork or collaboration. Each one has a different level of trust as people go through increasing level of trust. Collaborative and innovating networks appear. And so building trusting relationship is critical to moving toward innovating networks. It's cultivated by step, from knowing each other to sharing information, from sharing resources to aligning together, and finally innovating together over time as we move higher level of trust. So, and there's one more benefit of doing, and that's the distinction that we're creating is like the best is demonstrated by comparing strategic doing to strategic planning. Everyone knows we're familiar with strategic planning. There is a lot of analysis followed by action plan, and hopefully something gets done. Strategic doing, on the other hand, faces the reality of a world without hierarchies, when no one can tell others what they must do. There's a huge risk of failures. Here, once an opportunity is identified, we immediately follow with action. And then we deal with the difficulties or conflict by using cycle of reflection on action, process of aligning and realigning people towards shared outcomes. And here we manage risk of failures and we accelerate learning through the cycles. And so the key here for both, if we're talking about trust and if we're talking about learning and doing, is to jump at doing. An innovating network benefits a lot from doing together and collaborating in work. And if I want to go quickly over strategic doing, do we have time, Denise, to give an overview of what strategic doing is?
I think if we can do it really briefly, and we can answer any questions that people might give us in the next 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So strategic doing is a process, is a discipline for people to collaborate in a network. And it has these 2 questions of strategy, 4 questions of doing, and 10 skills of strategic doing that the discipline tried to teach. And if we start with a simple definition of strategy. There are 2 core questions in strategy. One is where are we going, and the other is how will we get there. And by answering these 2 questions, we have first an outcome here. By where are we going, we define an outcome, and then we define a path here. The second questions allow us to define a path toward this outcome. And this path will have initiatives, these little boxes here, and with milestone, little green boxes there, or we call them guideposts along the way towards the outcome. Then the strategic doing divides these into 4 questions. First, the where are we going is addressed by answering what could we do and what should we do, and the other question, how will we get there, is answered by answering what will we do, and what's our 30-30, which means what have we learned in the last 30 days and what we will be doing in the next 30 days. And so these are the 2 questions of strategy, 4 questions of how we're doing the work. And finally, we have these 10 cognitive skills for strategic doing that any practitioner of strategic doing go through learning. Not everybody will be great in these 10 skills, but hopefully the group and the network will have sufficient enough competencies within these skills to let things go. So they range from designing a psychological safe space, to converting challenge into actionable inquiries, to uncovering assets and linking them and create opportunities, and involve managing paradoxes, like if you have to prioritize, how can you prioritize if you have several opportunities, promising opportunities. And so it helped the group to work through exercises and solve these problems and solve these paradoxes. And then creating Pathfinder projects and clear guideposts, drafting action plans. Together, these skills help build and sustain effective, innovative network. While there's not much detail now I can give you, but these are foundational. Just want to tell you, these are foundational to the strategic doing methodology and crucial for achieving the collaborative goals in a network. Basically, strategic doing is not just that people sitting around the table. It's not about us that we're sitting about it. It's about how can we actually invite us to focus on our network. We're talking about here the fact that each individual comes with a network, like 30, 40, 50 people sometimes in their network. And say if you for example, if you think of 5 people, each with an average 50 people in their network, you're really talking about a network of 250. Think about it what we could achieve by managing the network and guiding it forward, that number. And so that's what I have for you in this allowable time. And I invite you for next step is to read the book. It's very easy read, simple book, and explore the website, strategicdoing.net. And if you have any question, I'll be happy also to receive it from you. Contact me on this address.
Don and Mohammed, thank you so much. I know we asked you to squeeze conceptual discussions into brief periods of time. So you've given us just a little bit of a highlight, enough to pique our interest. But really what we want to do with these types of events is to be able to have that collaborative conversation and dialogue. So I do open it up. Lonnie is watching the chat. So Lonnie, I'm going to first open to you to see, are there any questions or anything specific that we should reference from the chat right now? Or I have some questions, I'm always full of questions, that I would be happy to ask of Don and Mohammed.
There's one question in the chat about what can we do better, and the point that Courtney was making there was acknowledging the existing limitations and then working to improve them. I think one of the focuses that we have is that a lot of the people, I would guess most of the people who join this meeting, are aware of most of the problems that we're facing. So where we are now is what can we do together and how can we connect each other in this environment of trust to be able to innovate those solutions and accelerate the pace at which they happen, which is really what the Two Loops model is designed to illustrate. With that preliminary comment, I would invite you, Denise, to ask some questions, and I'll keep an eye on the chat.
Yeah, Lonnie, I love that. And Dawn, of course, my first thought, Jennifer, I see your hand up. We'll come right to you. I want to follow up with what Lonnie just shared. Dawn, I know that you have led in the past events that actually talk much more in depth about two loops and helps people to see where they are in that model. And I wonder if you have anything to share in regards to what Lonnie brought forward from the chat.
So I think in terms of what we can do better, I'm going to pivot a little bit and talk about how we can do things better, because, you know, both Mohammed and myself talked about relationships and trust and how important that is. And, you know, networks thrive on a horizontal plane, right? They don't thrive in a hierarchy. Our dominant system is extremely hierarchical. And relationships are often left in the dust, you know, because of transactions and because of survival, you know, financially, that the organizations are driven towards. So I think how we can do things differently is really important. And that is to build trust, pay attention to relationships, and, you know, just looking for that space where there can be true collaboration, not just how can I in my company succeed, right? But how can I collaborate with others so that we can all succeed?
Thank you, Dawn. Jennifer, I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. So Mohammed and Dawn, thank you very much. This was really insightful, and you've given me a lot to think about. I have a question for Mohammed, and it sort of segues on what you're saying, Dawn. I think most of us here are very, very aware of what's happening in healthcare from our own perspective, obviously. But I am looking at the 10th cognitive skill that you mentioned, Mohammed, which is the relationship or the relational capital, and this type of nudging that we are supposed to do. So we are aware of what's going on, but we do need to nudge where we can in order to make things happen. And I want to ask you, Mohammed, what would you say is a good way of nudging if we are going to be going out there, connecting with people and having our voice heard?
Yeah, I mean, the nudging aspect, it comes as a 10th skill in the strategic doing. It comes at the end. And the reason for that, it's the last kind of stage in terms of the collaborative conversation. So you go into the process goes into divergent and then convergent of ideas. Then you have an action plan, and you have a cycle of people coming back to check on how they did. Maybe the cycle is 30 days or less or more. Where the nudging is in between. That what we use is that continuous follow up, continuous checking if anybody is lagging something with something and needing help. So the nudging comes very useful between these times when people doing their things alone and they're waiting to have this common meeting, the check-in, next check-in coming. So in between.
Thank you. Thanks, Mohammed.
Mm-hmm.
Lonnie, any questions to bring forward from the chat?
Yes, several. Number one, just a tactical question. Someone's asking if we're going to make the PowerPoint available that Mohammed and Dawn were speaking to.
Mohammed, do you mind if I share?
Yes. No, I don't mind.
Thank you.
You go ahead. You have it.
Yep.
Then we have a really interesting question from Greg. If employers aren't disappointed with their healthcare plans, which a recent study suggested the vast majority of employers are not, and employees, patients do not embrace their responsibility to be more engaged in their own care, which many believe they are not and will not, how do we build a system around these two major obstacles? Thanks for an easy question there, Greg.
This is a good example of a very complex question that we're not going to find experts that are going to know the answers. And it's going to take conversations with many people from various different perspectives to figure this kind of thing out. And that just points to the kinds of relational coordination that is necessary to nourish these emerging ideas and is eventually this emergent system. That would be my answer to the question.
But I love that you said that, because it really built on something I had taken notes of through this conversation, is if we are seeking to collaborate just within the parameters of our current small existing networks, we're really going to be within that same echo chamber of what we or that small existing network knows and have lived. The expansiveness of building on a network of networks enables new awareness and insights and thought, things that we would never have tripped across or come across if we had stayed small. So we need to be able to broaden and reach out beyond, if you're a physician, perhaps primarily connecting with physicians, or nurses primarily with nurses, but how do we extend and collaborate and then bring others in so that our awareness can grow and emergence can actually happen? Lonnie, any other questions popping up?
I got an interesting, it's not so much a question, but a comment from Victor. And I would invite Victor to, I don't know, can we unmute mics or not?
Yeah.
I'd invite Victor says he has helped design plans that address this question. So I wanted to just give him a minute to give a little more detail to that provocative comment.
Yeah, so if employers aren't dissatisfied, I'll start with two things. So one of them is the ACA affordability. People on traditional healthcare plans, the premiums are only going up and up and up. They are starting to price themselves and their employees out of enrolling in any healthcare plans as far as contributions are concerned. That alone, that's one trigger that is getting the employers to look at alternate insurance models. So alternative payment models such as market-based or middle of the road payments to physicians, choosing something open access, reference-based pricing, cash pays, direct agreements, DPC-oriented movements. So you have that acting as one trigger to get the employers who are not disappointed, but who are going to be forced to be disappointed. I know Jennifer Ross also said something about the CAA. We are seeing an uptick in that. I work with another entity. It's just an open network of people who are engaging those employers who are being tapped on by the CAA, the ERISA-oriented plans. Non-ERISA doesn't really have to worry about that. But also in designing one of these plans, sometimes, and I hate saying this, sometimes it goes to the broker and how smart they are in implementing a healthcare plan. So you can do inside the plan design, such as an ICHRA or some sort of health share, to say, hey, employees, if you're not happy with what's being offered by the employer-sponsored health plan, these are some alternate health options that you can engage in, right? So for health share, this is not insurance, right? But this will cover you for the majority of the things if you don't have any pre-ex. These are ACA plans that you may want to jump into if your employer is simply offering a typical high deductible health plan. So employers are slowly starting to engage, but really it's easier to do it right now with employers who are like, we cannot afford anything anymore, right? Like help us afford healthcare again. And that's really what's causing the triggers for a lot of employers. So employers right now are really blinded by the broker relationships. And that's why we see a lot of the stagnation, because follow the money, right? Like how are brokers getting paid? They're getting a percentage of, the total cost of the plan. And so when you start removing certain incentives, you start removing the wool from the employer's faces, and then it gets a lot easier to get them to change how they're implementing the plan, therefore the plan that everybody enrolls in. So that's kind of, a quick answer to, work that I've done in this space.
Thank you for that, Victor. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, gosh, we need to introduce you to Linda and the work that she and her team are doing. So I'll think about that. Paul, I'm going to spotlight you for a second, because throughout some of this conversation, I knew your ears perked up when there was a mention of hierarchy. And I wonder if you want to say anything about that in conjunction with the work that we're doing with HRC and in regards to how we actually have emergence within the work we're doing. And just an FYI, you're on mute if you are about to speak. There you go.
Yeah, thanks, Denise. Hey, I'm Paul Burens. I had 39 years being a primary care family practitioner, so that's the background. I've changed an awful lot of attitudes pretty recently. I just learned about Medicine Forward last year, met Denise, met Lonnie, joined Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative, discovered the two loops model, and suddenly realized that it's a biological model for how humans can change their living systems. And that struck me as a doctor as absolutely intuitive, but I had not heard of it until this very year. So what I learned about two loops is that it's a horizontal flat model. Human networks are horizontal and flat. You know, your network of friends and family has no hierarchy. There's nobody in charge of your network. And so in Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative, we're trying to build a fractal model. Sorry, no one warned you there would be math, but here it comes. A fractal means that things look the same regardless of their shape. The easiest one I think to understand is waves. Waves on the beach can be tiny little ripples, or they could be gigantic tsunamis, but they all look alike. So our own collaborative is trying to be flat and horizontal. We don't have anyone in charge. We're all of us trying to do this are in charge. And we're trying to build a network of networks where no one's in charge, because hierarchical models, I think we just learned this, don't work. The Institute of Medicine reported in 2001 what we should do about healthcare. But that was the top of the top of the top of our doctors. That's the Institute of Medicine, the best physicians in the United States. And they told us what to do, and no one was listening because they're not running a network. They were just telling us what to do, and no one was listening because they're not part of the network. I see Victor nodding his head up and down like, yeah, right. So how are we going to do this? We don't know what the outcome is going to be. We're going to do it with a flat, non-hierarchical structure. There's no other way to do it. It's everybody in. And I like to say it this way, and I'll shut up. All we need to do is engage all the patients and all the providers. That's everybody.
Thank you, Paul.
Denise, there is another question that I'd like to
Yes,
interject.
please.
From Charles. Charles writes, we've talked about trust as a foundation to collaborative efforts. When considering this in the context of historically siloed systems, aside from intentional transparency, I'm curious to hear how others think this should be tackled.
Mhm.
How do you build trust among people who initially don't know each other? And I guess I would add a coda to that question, which is so many of us are now meeting people in a remote environment. So these aren't people necessarily that you get together with over coffee in person, that you get to know through going out, having dinner together, or meeting in a group setting somewhere together. So I would say the additional part of that question is, how do you work on developing trust in environments where people need to work together remotely? Now, that's not always going to be the case. There'll be many at the community level where a lot of this work happens that will do it together in person on the ground. But in terms of building these connections and building this this reinvention collaborative, how do we build trust with each other?
And I'll add to that, Lonnie, how do we do so when year after year our trust has been broken?
Good point.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, if I want to say about that in terms of my little presentation here, it's through doing, and it's by start working with each other. And once we have a project and we go into these cycles of matching action with words, and it takes time, but with every cycle of matching action with words, trust increases. So I think if I have a way to go, I would jump immediately in a project with people. So I connect with 2 or 3 persons, 4 persons, and say, how can we do a project together? I mean, let's explore our way into doing something together. And as we do it, as we start exploring the opportunity, gaining some learning and adapting to the situation we have, trust is built.
Can I just add to that? I think that another way to build trust / relationship is by knowing and caring for people. So when people feel known and cared for, they're much more motivated to do the work. There was a Berkeley School of Business study that showed when people are recognized for the work they do, you can increase productivity by 23%. When they feel known and cared for, or which we'll call appreciated, when they're feeling known and cared for, you can see an increase of productivity of 43%. So it's not about productivity, but being in relationship. I mean, we know how, people stay in a company because of their relationship with the people that they work with, right? Relationships are so important. So I would argue knowing and feeling known and cared for also has a lot to do with how this is going to work. I think we've got to shift there's an important shift that needs to happen to being aware and putting effort into relationship.
Oh, that whole topic, we could talk for another hour about. And what I offer is we're going to be in just a few minutes breaking into collaborative conversations, so small breakout rooms. So that might be a question to pull into those. One, introduce yourselves, and then continue that dialogue on that question. How do we build trust? But at this time, I do want to give Dawn and Mohammed just a moment for any last offers of insight or something that you might want to share with this group. And then I'm going to share the map that we've been creating just to give a little teaser. So Dawn, since I'm looking at you currently on my screen, I'll start with you and then we'll go to Mohammed.
Well, I think, what I just said was probably what I would like to end with. And that is that the world needs a shift. And it needs a shift to be attentive to relationships. And, it was interesting. I think it was back in 1994 that Pew Trust and the Fetzer Institute did a look at healthcare. They got a bunch of really bright people together and said, what does healthcare need? Back in 1994. And what they determined was that we need to be in relationship with our community. We need, yes, to be in relationship with our patients, and we need to be in relationship with ourselves. And so I think attention to relationship is just so important if we're going to build these trusting networks and get the work done that needs to happen.
I love that. And based on what you just shared, I will, with the summary, send out a link to Relationship-Based Cultures, an excellent book that really talks about those 3 levels that you just identified. Thank you, Dawn. And Mohammed, any last words you'd like to share?
Yeah, I agree with Dawn. It's the relationship, and I look at it from a little bit different way. Relationships get stronger when we do things together. Relationship also in another way. And if we have a disciplined way, a simple rule that we can follow to work together, that our work actually improve on our situation, we see progress in our situation, this builds trust. And something like a framework like strategic doing or other, any framework that help us, it's the doing that allow us to build trust, is the doing that allow us to learn and adapt to solve challenges. And that's what it is about innovating network. That's how we build an innovative network, through doing and building these relationships. And it will be the solution to the challenges we're facing.
Excellent. Dawn and Mohammed, I know that everything that you could have shared with us, we could have been here together for a much longer period of time, but I love that you have given awareness to things that perhaps those who have joined us were unaware of. And that is in part how we grow our network of knowledge. Now, I want to take just a few minutes to share the Impact Network map that we've begun to co-create within the Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative. So this isn't the work necessarily that we do. This is a tool that we're using to help do the work that we do. So this is going to be a teaser. It's going to be way too fast. You're going to have lots of questions. That's fabulous. Reach out to me and I would be happy to give you a much slower preview of the map. But for now, let me share my screen and show you a little bit of what we have been creating. So this is a map right now. It just looks like a bunch of circles, but if I scroll in, you're going to see some faces. So here's Linda, and here's Testy Testerson. Here's Gabe. Here's Lonnie. There are a number of different people, and you might see your name on here because any individual who has joined HRC is on this map. And joining HRC means that you've accepted my invitation to join our digital community and be some of the first individuals out here. We've added you all to the map. You don't know that yet, but now you do. And we would love to send you a link to be able to come out here and learn more. And let me show you what's on here. So right now you're seeing all of these individuals. I'm going to show you that one of the things that these types of maps enable you to do is to see connections. And right now this looks like just a bunch of dots with strings. But if I hover here on Gabe, you're going to see that those are his connections. So he has gone through everybody that is in this map and identified who he is connected with. Keely has not yet been out here. Lonnie has done this. And so you'll see by hovering, you can get a good idea of who they've said they've been connected with. And these individual threads will tell you their strength of connection. The bigger the number, the stronger the strength, meaning collaboration versus somebody I am aware of. But that's just one piece of this map. The other thing that we've done is, I love this feature. So this is geo. We can see on the map where everybody is residing. So right now we only have a few people who have gone out here and given us their postal code so that we can throw them out on the map. Everybody else is out here in the middle of the ocean kind of swimming around together. So we'd love to put you on the map by giving you a link to coming out here and joining us. And then another one that we've done is we're really interested, and watch that, it'll bounce to the center in just a second. We're really interested in identifying those who have joined us at these events. So this is the 5th event. It'll get out here on the map at the end of this. But right now, if I hover over the March event, I can see who attended. If I scroll in, you can start to see the names of, and I'm sorry, it's bouncing on me because I am not scrolling in this manner. But one of the nice things, if I hover here on Lonnie, you'll see that he attended all 4 events. And if we look out here at Tony, she attended 3 events, and Linda's attended 2. So it gives us an idea. And what we hope to do is start to add to this. Did you make a connection because you joined these events? So that will be a question that comes out here as well. So what we would like to do is offer you the ability to join us in this map, which means joining us in HRC. That is, I'm going to stop sharing so I can feel like I'm looking at you. That is the ability, I'm just changing my view. That is the ability to find yourself in this map. So if you have attended one of our events this year, I sent you an invitation to join us, and a number of people did join us. And so if you are in that digital community, you're on this map. So what I'm going to do now is send you, or put in the chat, a link that you can find yourself out there. And so that link will get you to a page that's going to ask for your name, and it's going to ask for your email. So the email you used to sign up for HRC is the one that put you on the map. When you sign in, you should then to your email get a link that enables you to fill in your profile. And then you can also see that map. Now, again, this was a very quick teaser. The link's there, but please connect with me. If you want to find more information about this, look at that map a little bit more, get help with getting yourself on the map or filling in your details on the map. Follow up with me. I will stay after this event if you're able to stay, and I'm happy to discuss further with you. But again, now that was just a quick teaser, far too quick, I'm sure. But we're going to move into what's called collaborative conversations. So just briefly before I do, I again want to say thank you to Dawn and Mohammed for joining us today and providing the knowledge that you have about 2 loops and strategic doing. And I thank all of you who are able to join us. I hope all of you still with us are going to stay forward with us into collaborative conversations.
Well, I don't think we solved the trust problem. I think the biggest problem, Denise, we talked about is that to get in front of the people who need to hear the message, the employers, you have to go through the brokers and advisors who are the screen. And so I always thought that I wanted to put billboards around town saying, think health, or who's responsible for your health, ask questions, be engaged. That was always my goal as a physician, was to make sure my patients understood their ability to take care of themselves and give them that agency. And yet, even I heard, Eric Bricker, a prominent physician, says it's no use. Patients will never be engaged. They won't do it. You have to do it for them. And I refuse to be the case. But going back to the trust issue, I think, if you show that you care, that you're competent, and that you do what you say you do, but they have to, I don't know how we get the message out to the employers. That's my biggest struggle.
And I'm of the mindset of never say never. It's we just don't know the answer yet. So how might we help them gain agency?
I think also, Greg, I know you know this, but internal advocacy is the way in. You have to have enough touch points with enough employees who are unsatisfied and who are going to push the issue with their upper management, or even one person of influence who can be your door in. It's like everything else. We have to find a way to build from the ground level up, I think. Jennifer looked like she has a hand up.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, the more employers and brokers you can educate about how to get away from the large carriers, like, getting away from the carriers who control a lot of things in a bad way, like Cigna, United, Anthem, Blue Cross, get away from the large PBMs, which are mostly owned by those large carriers. The more you can educate brokers and employers to peel away from them, like Victor said, there's already options, there's already solutions. We just need more people to know about them so that these large carriers have less power over our nation,
This is your time to
I always
chat.
default back to when this topic comes up, and I know the history of it, so it's a little bit of a rhetorical question, but why are employers even involved in our health? Like, is the role to educate employers, or is the future of health to actually remove them as a middle person, middle player in our health? It made sense back in the 1910s and 20s and 30s when they started to get involved, but I always feel it's important to go back to sort of a root cause question of, are we trying to fix what might be the broken system, or fundamentally come up with a new system?
Mhm. Well, Rachel quickly put her hand up when you spoke, Michael. So Rachel, oops, you're on mute.
Actually, I'd been trying to figure out how to put my hand up.
Oh,
I had a point coming off of what Jennifer was saying about like some of the methods being out there, and just more about contact and reaching enough people. I wanted to say I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm coming more just from the psychological side of things. The way that people overcome racism most often is to know somebody from a racial group that they feel biased against, and to have a human connection with them. And so I think, just like you said over and over in the presentation, that human connection probably is the answer, and the way that we find ways to create human connection for people in ways that incentivizes change in the way that we want it to, I think will help.
Thank you for that, Rachel. And just an FYI, I put it in the chat. Happy to stick around for another 15 minutes, but I also understand that some of you probably need to drop. So if you do, thank you so much for having joined us. Keely, I see your hands up.
Yeah, just really quickly in response to Michael, I would say that the question is a yes and, right? We absolutely need to be figuring out what is the next better thing that we could be doing, and start working on that solution. And in the meantime, figure out the best we can do with what we have right now. And they're not exclusive, right? We have to start that education now.
Thank you, Keely. Greg, I see your hands up.
And Michael, employers shouldn't be involved in employers' health. It's just, you know the history of it. They did to attract employees, and employees should be empowered to choose their own healthcare. And that's why I think you're seeing the ICHRAs and the QSARAs of the world take some momentum now to give the employees more choice. But the employers didn't take over an employee's health insurance to help them be healthier. They took over to attract new talent. So again, the incentives were wrong. So no, employers, that's the whole thing we're trying to do, is teach employers they can pay for health care, not health insurance, and they can provide benefits for the people that really do matter, instead of just picking the same old. So.
Great, thank you.
Oh, Paul, you're on mute.
Here comes another book recommendation. This is the Sociology of Change, where Damon Centola in his research shows that it only takes 20%. You don't need to get the majority to agree to something. You need 20% to get active enough to form a new model and change how everybody does everything. That's encouraging to those of you who think that it takes, changing everybody. You can't do that, but the front 20% can change things.
So before we do go, I just wanted to say that I'm currently unemployed. I'm going to try to figure out how to start an LLC soon. But right now, what I want to do with that free time is to offer, free conversations, math, analytics, or just, share knowledge about the entangled healthcare industry, because I was in an executive leadership program at one of the largest carriers. And I also worked for a PBM, which I kind of ran away from that job, not walked away, for very good reasons. And, I'm an actuary, so I can kind of walk circles around the numbers or renewals. If anyone wants me to look at a renewal, I would love to. But yeah, eventually I'll start charging things like inexpensive IBNRs to small employers so they can afford those. But right now I just want to offer whatever I can for free, and I'll continue to do stuff for free as much as I can. So reach out to me if you want to. And I especially love helping clinicians, just strategize around how to, what the problem is, what the solution is, and I'm pretty good at helping people implement their solutions.
Great.
I see Victor said yes to that, Jennifer. So this time is for you. Yes, Pamela.
I was going to, Jennifer, I have been unemployed now for almost, it'll be 2 years, January 2nd. I'm a healthcare leader as well. And it has been a challenge trying to find a new job. So I started a new company in order to utilize my time well. And so it's been a challenge doing that as well, but at least it keeps me busy. And in the meantime, I've done a lot of great volunteer work learning about my community because I was so absorbed into my healthcare job, as I always do, because it means a lot to me. It's not just healthcare for me. It's the work that we actually provide, the work that we actually do with our patients. That's why we actually do it. And so it's there are those old hat people still around, but I kudos on walking away, and it's a tough decision to make, but definitely one that you will not regret.
I see some claps there.
Thank you. It's hard to do the ethical thing sometimes. It doesn't benefit you immediately, but I think we always sleep better at night when we do the ethical things.
Jen,
much better, yeah.
it's good for your soul, ultimately, to be out of an environment that you want to be out of.
And it helps
Policy.
patients.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jennifer, you're reminding me that the map that Denise showed is incredibly powerful, but not when it's small. It gets more and more powerful in exponential way as we add people to it. 100 people on the map don't have that many connections. 10,000 people will. And you will find other people just like you trying to do what you're trying to do once you have a big enough map. We just need to grow it out.
So I'll stay as long as you all would like to continue chatting. If there's anything you want to know about what HRC is doing, you've got a number of the members here and we would be happy to share. But this is really your time to make connections.
Actually, hi, this is Craig. I am new to the group. This is my first session. If you wouldn't mind just doing a quick top line on like what it is that you encourage, I guess, members to seek out, or what your ultimate mission is.
Craig, you just opened a can of worms. Thank you for that. So I'll give a little snippet and then Paul, Dawn, Lonnie, Keely, they're all on this call as well. But in regards to what we're seeking to create, we are following that two loops model with the recognition that there are so many of us who came into healthcare with purpose and passion and or are otherwise connected through the healthcare system or the care process because we are patients ourselves. And we're identifying that these passion-driven individuals are falling out of the current system because the system is at that crest. It is on the decline, not because the people within do not themselves have purpose and passion, but the system has just gone as far as the life cycle of a system typically can. So we're identifying those innovators and change makers and seeking to network them, help them to find each other and to be able to identify those connection points between the different elements of the system that we need to transform and the work that each of us do, because it's highly complex. There's not one answer, but help them to find that space to network in a very non-hierarchical structure, and then to move into the space of communities of practice, incubators, whatever they may be, so that they can start to ideate, develop tests of change. And then when we see those tests of change flourish, how do we shine a light on them so that people become aware and can transition over to? But we identify ourselves as the connectors, the convener, the conduit. We, HRC, will not be the reinventors of healthcare. It's those innovators and change agents that we enable to connect and to ideate together who will reinvent healthcare. Paul, Lonnie, Dawn, Keely, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, of course I do. How I got to this was through the connections with people, but then through some books. The one I showed up, Change, that's sociological research. Okay, it's human research about sociology, how we connect as people. And I'm sorry, it's evidence-based. This is how things develop in human institutions. They develop through networks. And once you understand that piece of it, we've taken Impact Networks by David Ehrlichman as our playbook. And we're going to have Dawn and I are going to lead a reading of that this fall and have a book group. And we hope we'll have the author come in at the end. We're going to talk about how Impact Networks work and we're going to work on developing it here with HRC. And that network, what we're doing in biological terms is we're accelerating evolution. Human institutions evolve, and we can make that happen deliberately if we do things like build trust deliberately, convene people deliberately, connect them deliberately, build networks and connect networks deliberately. And it's been really quite a journey in just a few months. I personally met the guy who started Primary Care for All Americans. And I met Kathleen, one of our principals from Nurses Transforming Healthcare, and I introduced them. So I just connected two networks together with a single individual. But guess what? Primary Care for All Americans wants to connect to HRC because they want to connect to all the other networks. And so we're going to build a wide bridge, and that's not the only one. Jennifer, what about Metapreneurs? What's that? Well, that's one of our networks. It's inside of Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative, Medical Entrepreneurs. There's a group of those people. Maybe you're one of them. Pamela is. You know, did you know they exist? We need to make that stuff known, and building a network of networks where people can individually find what they've been looking for and didn't know they were looking for it.
Yeah,
That's
I did
perfect.
not. And I also think a lot about how physicians can stay independent when they keep getting told what to do by HCA
Right.
and other hospital systems and large.
So I'm trying, as a primary care doctor, I'm trying to reach out to Direct Primary Care as a network, and to Aledade, which is probably the most innovative group of primary care docs out there in the old model, trying to make it with value-based care. There are others who I've tried to reach out to, and they got swallowed and eaten by a corporation already. They're gone. So, you know, there are going to be fish that get eaten, but there are other fish that are going to survive.
Yeah, United Healthcare is the largest employer of healthcare workers in the world. They own 70,000 healthcare workers.
And they often are also listed on the list of the top money makers every year. They are in it for profit, not for care.
Yeah, they really destroy, they really don't allow healthcare workers to do what they need to do.
Mhm.
I think we got a view of them at the beginning from the day the earth stood still. Those little locust animals.
Yeah.
Well, I call them the Borg from Star Trek.
Oh,
You will assimilate, resistance is futile. But they invented vertical integration. Now all their competitors are just copying them. So it's
Mhm.
really sad, scary.
We just have to come up with an alternative, because until there's an alternative, status quo is where it is. Got to do something, even if it ain't quite right.
But
well,
Craig,
that's
I sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
no, please.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to address part of the follow-up question about what we're doing here. As we gather and connect people who have a lot to contribute are going to get connected to where those contributions are needed. We know that, but in an environment that is fundamentally constructed around trusting relationships instead of transactional, you know, send me your resume through LinkedIn and we'll interview you and see what, you know, what shakes out. So we're very enthusiastic and excited about the progress we're making at a remarkable pace.
And primarily, what we're enthusiastic about is the connection with individuals such as yourselves, that we're coming together for conversation. The next step through that development of connection and trust is coming together for action. And we look forward to what we'll be doing. Bye,
Okay,
Keely.
I'm going to wrap it too. I gotta.
Yep. All
around
right, everyone, thank you for joining us. More to come. Keep joining our events. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Arrivederci.
so
Have a good rest of your week.
You too.
Bye.